So guess what? It is still Easter. It is. It's still Easter. And it's still the time to proclaim with all the gusto and energy we can, Christ is risen. He is risen indeed. I find myself in these weeks following Easter still living with the Easter story a little bit. Still thinking about what it must have been like for the women who had watched Jesus Christ die on Friday horribly, who had been there when they placed him in the tomb, who had watched the stone roll in place, and then to show up on Sunday morning and find that the stone was moved and the tomb was empty and there was an angel sitting there. I've got a little stuck on the angel this week. The angel sitting, at least as Matthew and Mark tells the story, the angel sitting on top of the stone. And the women approach, and the angel tells the Easter story, and then the angel says, see for yourselves. Invites the women to move from outside of the tomb inside to see for themselves, to take a look that in fact Jesus Christ is not there, that he has been raised from the dead and he is alive. The angels invite the women to look to see, to test the fact that he is alive, to see the evidence there in an empty tomb. I was praying about that this week, and a question started to form in my mind. If the angel that spoke to the women could come here on a Sunday morning, and that angel could say to all of you gathered in this place, look at David Jans. Is Jesus present or absent in his life, or somewhere in between? When you look at the life of David Jans, do you see Jesus, or is Jesus absent? And of course, being one that cares about you, I flipped that question around. And I said, gee, I wonder if the angel would say to David Jan, do you see all these folk out here? See all those folk up there? Is Jesus present or absent in their lives? What about when you look yourself in the mirror? What do you see? If you were to ask yourself honestly that question, is Jesus Christ present or absent in your life? See, the heart of the whole story of Easter is that our experience with it is to be a visible thing. See, we aren't to draw attention to ourselves, but we are to live so connected to God that God is able to take our lives and make them a living billboard for the goodness of God in the world. I read something this week that has stuck with me. Every one of our lives is like a canvas on which God writes his goodness. Let that sink in a minute. Your life, my life, the things we've been through, the dark times, the good times, the mediocre times, the times when we've struggled, the times when we've got it right, all of those moments are like a canvas on which God writes his goodness. So that suggests something to me about the fact that our lives are to be used as a proclamation to the world of a good God. That says that God's goodness in our lives is not something we are to hold on to, it's something that is to be visible in the world. How's that working for you? If people were to look at your life, would they be able to see a good God working in you, even in the hard places and the dark times? I love this psalm, especially the second half of it. We don't know who wrote Psalm 116. We don't know if it was a man or maybe a woman. We don't know whether or not this psalm was put together in response to some kind of pain or distress in one person's life and then they chose to write it as a way of proclaiming to everyone else the goodness of God. Or maybe it was a person that wrote it and then wrote it for a group of people to use, for the group of people to say to God, thank you, God. Thank you, God, for what you've done in our life. Thank you for the way that you've delivered us from some tragedy. The reality is, whether it's one person or whether it's a group of people, it's still a powerful thing. There's been tragedy, there's been hurt, there's been distress, there's been some kind of a major moment of pain, either in a person's life or in a group of people's life. And a psalmist sat down and said, we prayed about this, and God, you stepped in, and you did something, and you did something good. How should I respond to that, the psalmist says? What should I do in response to this God that's always writing his goodness on the canvas of our lives? How should we respond to this to this God? And I want to be clear, what we're talking about here is responding, not requiring. This God doesn't write his goodness on our lives and then says to us, now, because I've done that for you, you better. Our lives are to say, God, look what you've done for me. How can I not do this for you? Do you catch the difference between those two? So this God, this psalmist says, look what you've done. How can I say to God, thank you? What can I do to celebrate the goodness of God? He caught 4 words in those verses that Pat read for us. I will lift up praise to God. I will praise God. I will be faithful to the commitments, the promises that I have made to God. Why? Because I'm afraid if I don't, God will somehow go bzzzt. No. Because God has been so faithful, I will be faithful. I will offer a sacrifice of thanksgiving. I will lift up my life. I will give my life to God as a way of saying thanks for his goodness in our lives. I will call on the name of the Lord, the text says. I will have conversation with God. I will engage God in a daily way so that God is talking to me. You catch it? And then the thing that strikes me about the psalm is twice, circle this, twice he says, I will do all of that in the presence of his people. I'm not going to go into some room back in the corner of my house and do those things. I'm going to do those things in places where people can see it. Why? So that they will look at the psalmist and go, wow, nice holy man there. No. So that they will look at this psalmist or look at this group of people and say, wow, look at what God has done for them. Look at how God has operated in their lives. They serve a good God, and then the doors will swing open for the people who watch us to encounter the good God that's at work writing on the tapestries of our lives. Are you with me? You catch the image? Our gratitude, our response to this God of goodness is to be a visible thing. It's supposed to be something that we do in ways that allow other people to behold. Why do we do baptism in the front of a whole group of people? Number of times, families have come to me and say, I really want to have my child baptized, but I don't want to stand up in front of that group of people. I mean, you're not that scary. You really aren't. But they say again, they just would rather not do that. We do it that way because baptism is a visible thing. It's something that we want to do in the presence of God's people so that God's people can say, wow, look at what God's doing. God is claiming families and lives and people. God is at work in good ways. Can I venture a guess? Would you say that somewhere, sometime in your life, you have circled a God that has been doing good things in your life? Would you say that? Would you say that God is, boy, you guys are like, whew. It must be the lighting, Matt. We better work on the lighting a little better here. You're all a little sleepy. Would you say that God's been good in your life? Even in the dark times? Even in the painful times? Even in the times that's distressing, even in the times when life looks like it's just collapsing and you're not sure about how to go forward, even in times when grief comes with waves in your life. When you face yourself in the mirror and you know that you don't want to be the person you are anymore, you want to be somebody different. Do you believe in a good God in those places? That God even there is busy writing good things on your life, whether you see it or not. So if that's true, then the question is, how are we going to respond to that good God in ways that other people can see it too? Here's what struck me as I wrestled with that psalm this week. God's goodness invites visible gratitude. There's a sermon note for you, so go ahead, write it down. God's goodness invites visible gratitude. Doesn't require, it invites. God's goodness invites us to do something in response to the wonder of God at work within our life. What's the image? How can I paint a picture for you to get this? As I prayed about that, God took me back to one of my favorite movies. How many of you have ever seen Dances with Wolves? Have you seen that movie? Oh, good, a lot of people. That's one of my favorite movies. It's a story about a lieutenant in the Union Army who does an act of heroism in a battle of the Civil War. And as a gift, he is given any post he wants throughout the country. His name is John Dunbar, played by Kevin Costner. John Dunbar chooses Fort Sedgwick, which is the furthest fort on the frontier. He wants to go there because he wants to see the frontier before it disappears. He gets there and he's the only one there, and he realizes that there hasn't been anybody there for a long time. He's been warned to beware of the Indians, that the Indians will kill him. So he sets up camp there, and he has a couple of encounters with the Indians, and he begins to realize that maybe they're not the demons that they were painted out to be. In fact, maybe they might be friends. And so he invites a couple of them to the fort one day. And they're sitting there in a circle, and he has pulled out a bunch of supplies, and one of the things he pulls out is coffee. And he makes some coffee for the Indians. And he pours them in their cups, and they sit there with the coffee in their cups, not sure what to do. And so he says to them, is the coffee not good? And then he realizes that even if they did taste it, maybe it wouldn't be that good, and he thinks about the bag full of sugar that he has. And he pulls out the sugar, and he reaches in and he takes a handful and puts it in the cup of one Indian called Wind in his hair. If you've seen this movie, is it coming to you? And he puts the sugar in, and Wind in his hair pulls the cup back and is pretty suspicious. And John Dunbar takes his fingers and touches the sugar, and then touches his tongue and invites the wind in his hair to do the same. So now watch this, okay? Watch this. Wind in his hair, with the cup in his hand, touches the sugar, and he looks like this. Remember that scene? Those of you that have seen the movie? And then what happens next? Wind in his hair takes some more sugar. And then he turns to the guy next to him. Are you following me? You follow me? When he tastes something good, and it changes him. And he wants to share it in a visible way. Are you tracking with me? When you and I, when the goodness of God comes home to us, when we begin to realize that even in the dark and troubling times, God is busy writing good things on the canvas of our lives, that even there, when we realize that, then we go from, and we want to help people catch this good God, get connected to this good God. So I thought, what could we do? How might I help you? How might I help you do something in the way of celebrating in a visible way the good God that's writing on the canvas of your life? As I prayed about that, I remembered a phone call that came to me this Thursday from my wife. I was in Harrisburg at a Board of Ordained Ministry gathering, and Betsy called, and she said, I have to tell you what happened today. I said, okay. And she said, our daughter took me shopping. Now get that. Kate had gotten paid. Betsy's birthday was a couple of Fridays ago. And Kate wanted to take her out and get her something for her birthday. And so they went to one of Betsy's favorite places, Bath and Body Works. Okay? How many of you know about Bath and Body Works? Ladies, you like that place? Is that a good, fun place? Okay, now more importantly, men, do you know that your ladies like that place? Okay, that's probably more important. And so I said, well, that's great. What did you get? And she began to describe to me this bag full of stuff that Kate got for her mother. I mean, she didn't get just a little tube of something for her mom. She got a bag full of stuff for her mom, as if to say, Mom, I love you, and thanks. It was a visible thing. You tracking with me? So as I thought about that, what would it mean this week if you and I were to give a gift to God to say, God, I love you, and thanks? What would that look like? And I thought about that a little bit, and I thought, one of the things you could do very simply is just to take a little time and sing God a song. How many of you know that when you sing in here, you're not singing to me, you're not singing to Sam, you're not singing to the folks that are up here, you're singing to the God that's present in this place. You get that? So take a minute this week and just sing to God. Who cares if anybody hears you? Who cares if you can sing or you can't sing? God's tone deaf to voices that don't work. Let that sink in. Why? Because God listens with the heart. God listens for what's in your heart. So maybe you could take a minute this week and just sing God a song and let the song say to God, I love you. Thank you. I know, men, this is touchy-feely stuff. I get that. Yeah, okay, I get that. But how might you do it? Maybe this week, you could engage in some acts of forgiveness and extend some mercy and extend some grace to somebody that has wronged you. As a way of saying, God, I love you. Thank you for the goodness that you've poured into my life. One of the gifts we could give to God is to forgive the people that have hurt us because he's forgiven us. Maybe one day this week you could set down the phone. I know you could set it down, and then when you set it down, pull your hand away. And instead of looking there, maybe pick this up for 10 or 15 minutes and read what God has to say. That's a way of saying, God, I love you, and thanks. Maybe you could get involved in a cause that represents something that you know God cares about. There's a whole bunch of them out there, dealing with hungry folk, taking care of the people that are fighting for life. There are all kinds of ways out there that you can give yourself to causes that God cares about. And remember, when you do, that act is saying, God, I love you, and thanks. Here's your homework. Find something this week that you could do to say, God, I love you, and thanks. And do it in a way that other people will see you. Not so that people will be drawn to you, but so that people will get connected to the God that's busy working in your life. Are you with me? That's your homework. Take something this week, do something this week that will say to God, I love you, and thanks. So I was thinking about how I might do that. I'm a musician. And so one of the things that I find myself doing quite often when it comes to God is either connecting to God in music or maybe singing. So I'm going to invite Sam to help me with that a little bit this morning. Thank you, Kim.
How can I say thanks for the things you have done for me? Things so undeserved, yet you gave to prove your love for me.
The voices of a million angels could not express my gratitude. all that I am and ever hope to be. I owe it all to Thee. To God be the glory. To God be the glory. To God be the glory for the things He has done. With His blood He has saved me. With His power He has raised me. To God be the glory for the things He has done. Just let me live my life. Let it be pleasing, Lord, to Thee.
And if I gain any praise, let it go to Calvary.
With His blood He has saved me. With His power